So here's some things discussed online. There's a lot of people in the community, sadly, in this community, that have great disdain for this particular police department. There is a lot of support locally in the Karen Read murder trial. If you're not familiar with the case, it's just basically an alleged hit and run by Karen Read. But I've watched a lot of the trial videos. I go online and I look up a lot of things, try to hear both sides, and there's definitely some suspicious things, such as there's allegation that one of the officials that was elected, who happens to be a witness in this case, and related to the owner of the house where he was found murdered, it's alleged that he has a conviction, and according to a felony conviction for a hit and run. Now, I looked at it. There was an article that allegedly he committed in 1994 in the state of Rhode Island. I did go to the Rhode Island court, and I looked up his name for that date range, and there was nothing there. That doesn't necessarily mean that, that it wasn't there. Now, what does happen sometimes is, based on the light sentence that the person got for 2 different crimes they committed against a foreign exchange student that led to a death, they got a very light sentence according to the article. So if it's true, if the person manages to get a record sealed in the state of Massachusetts, you're not allowed to discuss that in court. So there has been some discussion online, various places, by various people. And, they're asking why isn't it brought up. I listened to the prosecution and the defense opening arguments. Nothing about that conviction of that witness was even discussed. And he's a sitting elected person, and allegedly he hid from the voters that he was a convicted felon. And under the state of Massachusetts, you are not allowed to sit in public office if you are a convicted felon. Now, if you do get it sealed, though, then, you're not even allowed to discuss it in court. However, this is what I'm talking about in this particular video. There's allegations of 2 different things. One, that particular sitting elected official is going around using his position, harassing the citizens of the community by cease and desist letters, intimidating them to not discuss the criminal record. The problem with that, if it's true, even if it is a sealed record, they have the right to discuss who they want to vote for because he is an elected official. So to use his position to harass people and try to intimidate them and say that they don't have the right to discuss his criminal record, even if it's sealed, if it's just something, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if it's sealed or not. It's something that was in the news back then and we lived here for a long time, we know about it. Or for whatever reason it was found out by the public. People in the community have a right to discuss that because they have a right to, that's like tampering with election, to tell people they're not allowed to reveal something, on whether or not anybody can go after their personal life, how many divorces have they had, what religion are they, what is their positions on things. They judge them as a person, so they do have a right to know about convictions. Now, it would explain why they're not discussing it in court if it is true, because by Massachusetts statutes, which I will show you here in just a second, you cannot discuss it in court proceedings. Under the effect of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 276, Section 100A, describes the effect of sealing is it shall not operate to disqualify a person in any examination, appointment, or application for public service in the service of the Commonwealth of any political subdivision thereof, nor shall such sealed records be admissible in evidence or used in any way in any court proceedings or hearings before any boards or commissions, except imposing sentence in subsequent criminal proceedings. Now, this is a blog from a year ago. If this is true, this person is claiming, well, basically that they're implying they live there, so they would know. Recently been threatening community members for discussing his public criminal record. They're saying it's public, but I didn't find anything. It would have happened in Rhode Island. That was the state from an article. But anyways, a hit and run where somebody died years ago, which he did not publicly address when he was running for the select board. He has made many residents fearful, intimidated. Okay, so it's kind of wrong that this person is even sitting in an office. Now, let's say that if it is public record, that means it's not sealed, then that means he cannot sit in the office that he is. So if this is true, and he is sitting there, and he is a convicted person, then he cannot hold office based upon Massachusetts statutes. And so that would show that there is corruption by that fact alone, that, he has no business sitting in office, if it's true. Now let's talk about the other thing that's happening. Okay, I watched the opening arguments, and so apparently the attorney for the defense was not aware of this. If this is true, now I know that people have gone in and found, just by talking to residents there, that there was like a snow plow driver who saw that there was no body there, which is consistent with the fact that there were several people in the house who left, and if his body's found in the yard, it's so preposterous. It's so preposterous. People just pay attention. How is it possible for several people in the house to walk out of their house when they left that night and not see a dead guy in the yard, or a dying guy in the yard, or whatever, who's a pretty large guy? And so this is consistent, with people who know things that they didn't investigate. So according to this guy, now this was mentioned that they did shortly thereafter get rid of the German Shepherd, which there was consistent attack marks of a German Shepherd, especially a trained German Shepherd. I don't know if it was a trained German Shepherd, but they grab you on the arm. If you ever watch police training videos, they grab you on the arm, an upper arm, and that's exactly where he has a huge bruise underneath his arm, and it looks very consistent with claw marks and bite marks. If you look at the pictures. Now, I don't know anything about the clothing, if there was tears in it. I did see a video of a guy who was patted, kind of hit by a bear, if you see that video, where some dude was trying to get a bear to get out of their area or whatever, and the bear took a swipe at him on his way out, and his shirt wasn't torn, but when he lifted his shirt up, he had a very large scratch mark. But anyways, so he had a fractured skull, blunt trauma, so, and then he has a defensive mark on his hand. Okay, so there's not consistent with being hit by a car. I mean, how are you going to hit in the head? But the car, but it is possible that the dog attacked him and then he hit his head, knocked him over, and he hit his head. And that could be, he had, his eyes were swollen, which can happen from a fractured skull. At any rate, but let's talk about the carpet. The carpet. Tore up all the carpeting and replaced it. That's a very odd thing to do right after somebody dies in your house or dies on your lawn, and then nobody goes into that house and does anything, because they instantly focus on somebody that would give them an excuse for not going in the house and investigating that the guy died in the yard, at any rate. There's a lot of different things. I mean, too much to discuss in this video, but I just want to talk about this carpeting, okay, because somebody must have witnessed it for this person to be discussing this. This is like the Reddit website, and a lot of people, that are local, go on here and discuss stuff. There's people that I've read in these blogs that actually live there. I don't know who's behind this username. I think that they should have went forward and, mentioned this, but again, there was the whole snowplow driver that was overlooked, but for somebody went in there and talked to him, and there was a lot of things, so I don't know. Maybe somebody did call it in, but somebody witnessed that when you take out a carpeting out of a house, it's kind of hard to, hide that, because carpeting is very large when you roll it up and you move it out of a house. For whatever reason, this person, if it's true, okay, tearing up all the carpeting out of the house, getting rid of your beloved pet shortly thereafter of the death of I have high suspicions of this case, and it's sad the amount of people that are involved. I just ask for people to pray for God to make a light to show the truth of what happened here, and if there is corruption, to just break it down and expose it. At any rate, I'm watching the trial, and I'm going to be covering all the different aspects. There's a lot of different things that people discuss about this case. There's a lot of different things, but this is one thing that I'm concerned about, is why this is not discussed. If they tore up the carpeting and the defense doesn't know about this, I think that somebody should contact these lawyers and say, hey, what about the carpeting? And maybe get a hold of this person. Of course, they're in the middle of trial, probably is not going to be able to do that because they would have to subpoena. I just pray that whoever knows stuff like this, they should come forward, but they're probably scared because the police can be, if they're got corruption going on, they can be very retaliatory. So people need to be, have discernment and be careful. But anyways, that's it for this one. But I do think it's also important that any citizen of this community who's been threatened by this person, going around threatening community members who are the ones that vote people in office, that's pretty strong. Like that's a large amount of oppression. That one, if it's true that he was convicted of a felony and not allowed to hold public office, he's got chief of police pictured with him, as shown in the trial, that donating to his campaign, okay, and that it's just he's a witness in the case, and he's going around threatening community members. There's supposed to be some federal investigation, which I don't really hold much hope for that, because you got a trial going on and they haven't done anything to this. It's been going on for months and they haven't done anything. And I think people need to contact the FBI and say, hey, this guy has been threatening community members, if this is true, for discussing his public criminal record in a hit and run. Now, granted, if it's not true and he's threatening them with slander and libel, then that's his right to do that, because people may have picked up if you go in records, could be the same person with has the multiple people with the same name. For example, this doesn't mean that this is him just because it's the same state and it's his name, you know what I mean? But the accident, the hit and run, was from Rhode Island. So it may have been somebody that lived there that knew him. See what I'm saying? You can go into a state record. You need to know, like, their middle name, their date of birth, social security number. So I don't know who started, the revealing of something that happened in 94. Now, to be fair, as far as the carpeting, it could be, it's saying before he sold the home. Maybe he was just trying to do home improvements. Like how soon after the house was sold that he tear out all the carpeting and replace it. He could just be doing home improvements. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily mean that it was directly related, but it's pretty sad that they didn't go in there inside the house and do any kind of search, and that's pretty bad. And also, when she discussed the tail light, it was only cracked. But then it later changed to there was pieces all over the lawn, even though they didn't find it until days later, and it snowed after that. So it should have been covered up, but it was on top of the snow. So that really does look like something planted. But the fact that there was conversation that should be part of videos or recorded, she detected the presence of a cracked rear tail light the next morning. It was only cracked. It was only cracked. But when you see it later, after they take her vehicle, there's nothing left. And then all of a sudden you have pieces everywhere. You can't. And then there was a video where she was backing up when she was going to look for him, and it does appear that she would have lightly tapped another vehicle with, her car. And I just think when I look at the totality of it, I think the bottom key evidence is going to be how many people was in the house that left and did not see him. And then the snowplow driver who said that he wasn't there, two different times, like 12:30 and then 3:30. So his body was placed there. And those bite marks and those scratch marks on his arm and them getting rid of their dog. You have to listen to all the evidence, but the things that's going on in that community, the threats and intimidation allegedly by that guy who if he was in fact convicted felon, why exactly is he still elected? But I think the worst thing that, in fairness to them, she implicated herself when she did admit in I don't know, I think it was like Dateline interview, she did admit that she said something along the line of, did I hit him? Because, she's trying to figure out what happened, and maybe doubted herself that she didn't say she did. She said, did I? And I think, if you're sober, you probably would know if you hit another human being. But his injuries do not line up. I just think the hotel light argument is not even properly being done, because, he should be saying it doesn't matter if the tail light had been broken, because hitting him with a tail light, if you look at his injuries on his hand and several skull fractures, what did he do? Lean down and put his head up against the back of our vehicle so she can ram him in the head? He's standing up and he's 6'2". How you gonna hit the top of his head to break his skull? What'd he do? Lay down on the ground and say, hit me, baby, and then back into his head or something? How can you hit the top of his head? And he's laying in a yard, not up against anything. It doesn't add up. So the tail light it's just a red herring or dead herring. It just doesn't even make sense for them to discuss the tail light. And again, that big huge thing on his arm, there's nothing that hitting them with the back of your vehicle that you could do that to their arm to cause, almost look like knife cuts. And that's consistent with the dog, who's a German Shepherd, who latches onto your arm. There was puncture type wounds, so that would be where the teeth landed on his arm, and then scratched him with his claws, and the big bruise is where he probably jumped on him and attacked him, and he probably fell and hit his head. Those dogs are strong, and he probably was not expecting it, but at any rate, wait for all the stuff to come out. But I definitely am believing that there's something suspicious going on with just the whole fact that the cops are connected. And I'm sorry, several people cannot leave that house and not see this man out there in the yard. Then there is the FBI, allegedly the FBI. Now, this has been in major news. Some major news have stated the fact that the lady, Jennifer McCabe, I think her name is, allegedly the FBI investigated as well, but they found out that, I guess they hired an expert, and he concluded that, a computer analyst or technical expert, the best one in the country, according to her lawyer, concluded that the Google searches for how long does it take for somebody to die laying in the cold or something like that was done prior to he was found, from what I understand, by none other than the lady in the house who made a 911 call. And who was completely unemotional if you listen to that call. So that's pretty suspicious. So I know it's a far stretch for some people to say, oh, all these people all together couldn't do conspiracy. And I know there's been a lot of times in this country where there are big conspiracies like that. So I just think people should keep their hearts open to, both sides and hear all the evidence and pray that the truth comes to light. What do you think about that comment about the carpet and the dog, and then there's a whole bunch of different stuff, but this case is, I hope and pray for the sake that if there's corrupt stuff going on, oh my goodness, what else is happening there? Who else is being oppressed? Okay, maybe sometimes a big case like this happens and it'll open up and shed light on a lot of other things. But then that guy who was, elected, if he does have a conviction, he should not be allowed. If it's public record and it's not sealed, then he is not eligible to even be in the position he's in. And so pray that if they do an investigation, that they will really, truly take action.